Okay, great. Welcome everybody. As John said, this is GoPowerEV. We have a solution for EV charging for multifamily and apartment buildings. Just a little bit about why we need EV charging now. In California specifically, 100% of new cars sold by 2035 will be electric vehicles. In Silicon Valley, we're seeing that number being at 45%, and in places in Southern California, it's 30%. If you look at single family homes, about 80% of charging takes place at home. And one of the biggest barriers to adoption is indeed the fact that in apartment buildings, there is no convenient place to charge. And it's actually a good revenue generating opportunity for apartment owners. So specifically, we know a lot about traditional chargers, public chargers, and those are being installed in some places in multifamily and apartment buildings. There's quite a bit of challenges with them. First of all, they're very expensive to install. If you look at a per parking space cost, that ends up being about $10,000 to $20,000, $35,000. They're generally unreliable. About 40% of them are down at any point in time. They require this notion of musical cars, which we've coined to describe the fact that you put one of these units in a visitor place or a common area, and the cars have to essentially rotate around them to get a spot, wait. Those who are charging have to face idle fees. So it's generally inconvenient. And for the most part, they don't scale. These units consume a lot of power, as you know, and you can put the first one in, but in order to put the second one in, it requires a general upgrade of the transformers and the electrical supply. So we feel that the unique challenges of multifamily are a few, and we've heard these from conversations with customers. The first one is you really need to have residents charge in their own space. If you take the model from single family home where people have the convenience of charging in their own parking space, that is the model that we need for apartment buildings if we're going to have wide adoption of electric vehicles. In general, apartment managers, apartment owners need complete installation management. Installing EV chargers is typically a construction project. While it's not a super complicated construction project, it is one, and it involves the vendors, electricians, the utilities, the city, and this is not something that is typically undertaken lightly by an apartment manager, and therefore needs installation management. It needs to be priced suitably for a whole garage. We have this notion of load balancing, which basically means that if you put in more than 10 stations within an existing load, you need to have some software to balance the load between the stations. And they need to have optimized charging rates so the residents can charge for the lowest possible cost. So in order to incentivize residents to charge at home, it needs to be comparable or lower than the cost of public charging. So again, in the traditional model, you have one unit or a few units in common spaces, and basically you have the cars and the residents charging and then waiting for a place to charge. This would typically happen in peak hours when people come back from work. In our model, for the price of one of these stations, we can power a whole garage, and you see how that works. We have one station between every two spaces. And that way we have residents charging conveniently in their own space and arguably for a lower price, and I'll get into that. So the way this works is it's a two-step process where we start by installing what we call the ready base, and that is a wired aluminum frame, essentially wired for 240, and we install that everywhere. And when residents come with EVs, we upgrade them and essentially slot in the power port. and that is a smart outlet with 2 L1s and 1 L2 in the middle. The advantage of this approach is you can come in once with the electricians, the government, the permitting, inspection, and take care of it one time and essentially future-proof it for the next 5 to 10 years because all the spaces will be ready. So if I go back to this picture here, this is a typical installation where you see some of the spaces are powered, that's where the cars are, and some of the spaces are just wired. And for now, it would be a gas vehicle there, but over time, it enables the property manager to enable EV charging there. I'm going to pause here just to see if there's any questions so far in the approach.
So, sure. I see on the power port, you've got 3 outlets there. 2 of them look like the regular household outlets that I'm accustomed to, and the one in the middle looks a bit different. Can you explain that?
So the 2 on the sides are level 1 ports, and the one in the middle is a level 2 port. Are you familiar with the notion for charging of L1, L2, L3?
Okay. Yes, I believe I
Okay.
am.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got a question on the level 2 port. How much power can you get out of that? Because it looks like it's a relatively, small amount compared to like a, 1450 kind of a connector.
Yeah. So typically with the level 1s, the right way to think about it is how many miles can you get overnight when a resident comes in and plugs it in. With the L1s, it's typically 60 miles overnight, and with the level 2, it's about 150 miles overnight.
Okay.
What we're trying to we're trying to switch the model from thinking that from the gas model that you go into a gas station and within 5 minutes you fill up. That is not a model that works for multifamily because of the load constraints. So we're trying to incentivize behavior to charging at a lower rate overnight for a longer time, which is better utilization of the grid and enables ubiquity. Essentially, a lot of people can charge at the same time.
Very good. So you're using, looks like you've got a 20 amp connector, so that means an effective charge rate of 16 amps.
Yes.
At 240. The L1s, of course, are down to 12 amps max.
The L1s can actually run at 16 amps as well, but yes.
No, I don't think you can say that you can run at 16 amps from an L1.
I do every night. So
There's
yeah, I have a charger. I have a unit. It's actually they sell them on Amazon, and part of our strategy is we actually provide a link to the residents. And yeah, you can get it's like a portable cord, and it supports both the level 1 and the level 2. It comes with 2 different plugs, and it's 16 amps whether you plug into level 1 or level 2.
okay. John, I understand that. I agree with what you're doing. Typically, owners who have level 1 chargers that came with their cars, they're restricted to 12 amps.
Yeah, my Bolt does 8 or 12, and they kind of did that with the assumption that it wasn't actually a dedicated circuit and it was a shared circuit, so they set it up that way.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Rachel, continue. Thank you. I understand what you're doing, and I think it's a great approach. Continue, please.
Thank you. So one of the other things to mention here is very often when we go into garages and they're underground, and often sometimes several levels on the ground, you don't have a Wi-Fi connection or any kind of internet. So we put in the LCU gateway controller on the top there to essentially bring connectivity to those places. The other thing is that we put in a separate dedicated meter that is a sub meter to the utility. So in where we are around here, it would be directly connected to PG&E. The advantage of this is a few things. Number one is we can tap into EV tariffs, which are typically lower than the regular electricity tariffs, not everywhere, but in many locations. And secondly, we can, in doing it that way, we can actually bill the users directly, as opposed to having to get the property manager in the middle. One of the typical complaints is that property managers, if they just install hardware or any other solution, they have to get in the middle of getting the electricity bill in the end and divvying it up between residents according to time of use, according to who charges what. So in this way, with having a meter, we take them out of the picture, we make their lives a lot easier, and they really don't have to get involved in the EV charging. So a little bit about the residents' perspective on this. And again, we designed this with the perspective of incentivizing residents to charge at home versus charging publicly, and incentivizing them to charge overnight, which is much better for everyone. So first of all, on the left, you see the app. This is the resident app. It has 3 different modes to make it, to essentially give residents a trade-off between getting their charge now versus getting it later, but at a lower price. So if they absolutely have to charge now, they have a mode called the Now, which gives them charging immediately. If they don't absolutely have to get it now, and they can defer to charging overnight over a longer duration, we have the Eco mode, which finds them the lowest electricity rate, and the Auto mode, which basically says, if I come in at 8 o'clock at night and I plug it in and I need 40 miles for my commute tomorrow, I can say I need 40 miles by 7 a.m. tomorrow, get me that at the lowest rate. So the Eco and the Auto are by far the most popular uses of this. And in that way, again, we offset the load to overnight, and we're able to balance between the stations. If they do that, there's significant savings in terms of the charging rates. So if you look at the chart on the right, by charging at home, they can typically, for a month of usage with about 1,000 miles, it typically costs about $90 to charge. If they go to a public charger, that's almost double. And the reason for that is primarily because of the markups that they do in terms of the public chargers do in terms of the electricity, and the fact that they cannot tap into time of use rates. Gas car is somewhere in the middle, closer to the top there. But again, there's all the way around, there's significant savings by charging at home with this approach of shifting it to overnight.
And Rachel, just to clarify, when you say not tapping into time of use rates, I think what you're highlighting is that when you're charging in public at a fast charger, generally the user themselves are not especially flexible, right? You're trying to get somewhere, so you're stopped off at the supercharger. And so you want to charge within the next 30, 40 minutes or whatever. And whatever the rate is at that time, that's essentially what you're paying. Whereas at home, you plug in at 5 in the afternoon, we can say, oh gosh, you're not leaving till next morning. 5 in the afternoon is peak time, so we'll wait until 9 o'clock until the rates come down, and then we'll charge your car at that time. So I think that's what you're highlighting. It's the public units can themselves get time of use from the utilities. It's just the people who are arriving at those chargers. It sort of just depends on, when they're there.
Thank you.
Excuse me, may I interrupt for a second? Ben, I just got a request from Lawrence. He's trying to get in, and he's waiting to be let in.
Okay,
to the meeting.
thank you. Thank you. I missed that, and I'll take care of it.
The other thing we've done is create a portal for property manager. So this is a closed system, not no one from just the street or the public can go in and charge in these places. So for that, the property manager has to admit people and take them off when they leave the property. We've made this portal super easy for them to use, and it's basically sign on and sign off for the residents. If they choose to, they can get very involved in how much electricity is being used, the kilowatts per person, etc. But if they really don't want to, it's minimal involvement, and it basically takes care of itself. One other thing I forgot to mention is that the units themselves have a camera in case of any vandalism or problems with it, so they can actually see video footage of that. It's a turnkey management system, so we are the single point of contact for all needs for the property manager in terms of maintenance and repairs. We take care of everything. Again, the billing of the electricity is done directly to the residents, so they don't need to worry about it. Support for the property manager and for the residents, we do that. And we do quite a bit of education to end users in terms of the value of electric vehicles, which electric vehicles are available, how much they save, things like that. Here's an example of a property in San Jose that we've installed. So you see here the wall of chargers. Some of them are powered, some of them are just wired. You see the submeter. You see I believe this is a Tesla charger actually in process in the middle of charging. So this is what a typical garage would look like. A little bit going back to the L1, L2 discussion. Again, with L1, typically 60 miles overnight, with L2, 180. And a little bit about how the key influencers are thinking about this. You see the quote here from Peninsula Clean Energy, which is one of the most influential community choice aggregators around here. Actual driving need are satisfied with L1 and L2. Car and driver pretty much says the same thing, that L1 and L2 is really the solution to most of the driving challenges today. So this is, I have a lot more slides, but for the purpose of this group, this is all I wanted to share at this point. I wanted to see if you have any more comments, topics for discussion, questions.
I just wanted to mention that this is a very clever and well thought out product, and it seems like you've hit all the bases for a home run. The question I had was about the LCU. So basically that provides Wi-Fi to the user so he can, start a charging session while they're still in the car on the, 3rd level underground.
Yeah, I'll take that, Rachel, if you want. The LCU, we call it a local control and uplink gateway. So it provides cellular connectivity so that we can mount that, outside the building, up where there's good cell service, and then it connects to all the individual devices. If it is 3 levels underground, that's fine. What's nice about our solution is you start a charging session by tapping your cell phone on the outlet, and you don't need internet access in the garage to make that happen. So in other words, if you are underground and your phone does not have internet, you can still start a charging session.
Thank you.
Yeah, the other role of that gateway, though, it does, if you have 20 people trying to charge on the property, that gateway will kind of figure out how to cycle the vehicles charging so that everybody gets their needs met. And then over time, you know, when you start to get things like vehicle to grid, when we have solar and storage, and we're trying to manage all that, that gateway is actually tied into the grid via our cloud. And so it knows what's called demand response events. So if there's an issue going on in the grid, there's a plant down for maintenance, or there's fires, or it's a hot day and the operators asking people to conserve, we can act on those signals. It also gets it has the real-time pricing of electricity, and it actually has a schedule that it can look into the future and see what the prices are. And so it's able to take all that into account as it's managing the electricity. And Rachel, we should have mentioned we raised money on a seed round, and we are fundraising. So if any members do investing, that's they can contact us. But yeah, we're especially interested if people know about apartment buildings where people can't charge and they want to refer them to us. We have over 1,000 spaces that we've sold in California. And we're ramping up now. We're in Southern and Northern California now.
Have you checked with Silicon Valley Power? I happen to live in Santa Clara, and we're independent of PG&E for electricity, although we're stuck with them for gas. And they have some sort of a program for multi-unit dwellings that I received a little slip in one of my bills recently. And they mentioned it, but I don't know if you're working with them or not, but apparently they have installers available to install stuff.
Yeah, so we do work with Silicon Valley Power. There's a few utilities and agencies in the Bay Area that have very generous subsidies for EV charging for multifamily. Silicon Valley Power is one of them. Silicon Valley Clean Energy, which covers San Mateo, is another one. Palo Alto is another one. So buildings in those areas will get substantial rebate and subsidy on the installation piece. So just by the way, because when we come in and we install just that wired frame, we're immediately about 10x lower cost than the other alternatives. And so, you take that and then you add the subsidies to it, and it's a really great value proposition now when there are these subsidies available to essentially wire the whole garage.
Yeah, I can show that if you want.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of cool. And this is, you're probably aware, if you're trying to scale up, like if you were remodeling your kitchen, and you remodeled your kitchen and you have a single oven, and you got your counter and it's mounted in the cabinets and everything, and your kitchen's now all in place. And then 2 years later, your spouse says to you, hey, let's add a second oven. It'd be really handy to have a second oven. You're redesigning everything. So the cool thing about this is, let's turn off the background. So this is it here. And the way it works is, the front just comes off like this. And so this is what we have to get the permit for and install. And this is in between every 2 parking spaces. And the conduit comes in here. This is a waterproof compartment, and the wiring terminations are in here. And then this connector has a cover over it. And then, when somebody buys an EV, it literally can take 5 minutes to, swap in to install this and set it up. So it's great because when we go to a multifamily property owner, they very commonly are like, well, I've got a 100-unit property. I've only got 3 people with EVs right now. And we can say that's fine. You can still set up for 50, 60, 70 spaces, but we'll only, you know, put the power ports on for, you know, a half dozen or so. And that lowers the cost for everything. And then as more people buy EVs over time, you don't have to go and get a new permit. So anyway, I see Joe has a hand raised there.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you for that, John. First of all, I agree with Jerry that your solution is brilliant, that your distinguishing feature is that the owner supplies their own EVSC, that you're not the EVSC provider, which I think is absolutely brilliant. And your power management is great. First of all, I'd like to apologize. I misspoke earlier. I didn't realize that you had a NEMA 520 and not a 515 connector on each side.
Yes.
So, I agree. You can draw your 16 amps without any problem for that 20 amp connector, assuming you've got a portable EVSC that'll handle it.
Exactly.
All right. Now, with that out of the way, a couple of questions. First of all, what are typical recurring costs for managing this this system in a typical apartment house? You know, pick a number, and what are the ongoing costs?
Yeah. So there's two types of costs. One of them is just a maintenance fee, a monthly fee for all of the equipment that we put in, the LCU gateway, the wired bases, etc. That tends to range between $200 and $300 a month, depending on the size of the property. And then in addition, there is essentially a rental fee for the powered boxes, and that's $15 a month per space. So both of those go to the property owner or property manager. They can typically choose to pay for the latter one, for the powered base, with an amenity fee that many people charge for dedicated EV charging. Amenity fees typically for EV charging range between $50 and $100 a month, so they can quickly make that up.
Oh, all right. Thank you very much for that. And you basically have only one cell phone connection to your entire system.
Correct. Yeah. So it's a cellular uplink. And because the kind of control is local, if that ends up being intermittent, I mean, we've all seen how the cellular networks work. It's fine if, you know, if our property can't communicate with the cloud for a few minutes here and there, everything continues to work fine. So.
Next question, UL listing or other, what's the status of that for you?
Yes, we're UL 2594 certified. So that's the standard for EV charging. And your comment earlier about EVSE, the definition of EVSE is very loose and broad, but I agree. The kind of what's commonly called the portable charger, but the cord is usually that's what is exchanging the communication with a car. Yeah, you know, it turns out that from a maintenance perspective, the cord and the J plug are the most common things that break. And it's especially worse in where the people don't own them themselves. They take less care of them. And so you see that, you know, as you know, Rachel showed that statistic about, you know, what you see in with public charging. And that's something that the property owner doesn't want to have to deal with. And so our unit, if it does break, we can swap it out in 5 minutes. So you don't need an electrician to repair it. And then it's going to break less because it doesn't have the cord. And yeah, people then use the cord that, as I said, it either comes with a car or those 16 amp level 1, level 2, it's about $160, $170 on Amazon, and we provide a link to the property manager that they can then share with their residents.
Thank you.
I'm passing along a question that Sybil asked me to bring up. Can you tell us how many apartment and condo installations you have in Santa Clara County?
Santa Clara County.
So Santa Clara County runs from Palo Alto all the way down to including all of San Jose. And I'd say like 2/3 of our sales are in Santa Clara County, roughly. So yeah, we have about 1,300 that we've sold. So I'd say 600 to 800 of them are in Santa Clara County. We have Silicon Valley Power, several in Santa Clara itself. We have several in Mountain View. We have a couple in Palo Alto. We have a couple in San Jose. We have a Sunnyvale. So yeah, we're sort of all in that area. The subsidy programs just got refreshed in Marin Clean Energy. And Marin MCE actually doesn't just cover Marin, it's kind of the whole North Bay. And up, including Solano and so on. And so we're just kind of ramping that up substantially there. And the subsidies are generous in San Mateo County.
Where are your units made? Are they made here in the United States, or are they imported from China?
We have two contract manufacturers. One of them is headquartered in San Diego, and they have factories in Mexico and China. And currently the units are made in China. So they're designed here and they're prototyped here. We
And they're QA'd here and tested here.
Yeah.
Have you seen any supply chain issues, or do you anticipate any?
We did 18 months ago. Supply chain was definitely a factor. And it was more in the cost than the availability. Can you guys hear me? I see Ben. You hear? Hello? It's okay?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay. Yeah, there was like a microcontroller chip that normally cost $12, and it was available for $75, and things like that. But no, and part of the reason we have two different suppliers is to help manage that. So we have the availability of scaling up very quickly. So we've got high capacity. The other thing, it's probably occurred to you that when you think about those two parts, the ready base and the power port, the ready base is essentially, die cast aluminum. It does have a very tiny but very simple circuit board inside of that waterproof compartment where the wiring terminates onto it and things like that. But that's very easy and low cost to manufacture. And we can ramp that up quickly, and the lead times are very short on it for us to order them. And that's what actually has to get installed with the permit and so on. And then it's after we pass inspection. So usually there's between permit and inspection, there's 5 to 8 weeks. And so it gives us extra time in managing our supply chain to be able to get those units in. And then, of course, we don't populate all of them with power ports based on as people buy EVs. So generally speaking, we're able to forecast pretty well as the EVs grow. So we've sort of, it's really clever, I think, that the kind of simple, short short time, short advance notice product that we can order quickly and easily is the one that, we have to order quickly and easily. And the more complicated part of it, we can manage better. So makes it scale nicely. Joe.
Okay. I'm very intrigued and very interested. How do I invest in your company?
Yeah, I got my email on my my thing. You could shoot me an email. We have we did our seed round last year and built the product and got our first installations with that. And then the actual installations, we don't use the equity money that we're raising to pay electricians. We actually, there's subsidies and grants and there's all sorts of things that are great for that. So we're really raising our second round to grow our sales team and our operations team. And so, it's we call it it's the seed 2 round. So we're not yet at the kind of series A. We can accept smaller investment via what's called a special purpose vehicle. It's like an LLC that invests in our company. And, if somebody wants to write a larger check, we can go, we could go through a diligence process and provide all the information. And we're a Delaware C corporation. It's a pretty typical Silicon Valley startup. It's very standard. It's not like we're not like a partnership or a proprietorship. It's a regular corporation.
Do you have any patents to protect your intellectual property and have competition coming and undercutting you?
Competition I love. It's healthy. I think we're better than the competition. We do have 2 patents. One is related to the mechanicals and hardware. And, everything from this hybrid level 1, level 2, which is really nice because, when multifamily people move, somebody wants to charge a scooter, that's great to plug in level 1 or a plug-in hybrid for that matter. The next resident who moves in, has a longer commute, full battery EV, and people move every 18, 24 months in multifamily. So I think that hybrid level 1, level 2 is great. That's part of the patent. And then that mechanical separation of the power port and the ready base is part of that patent. And then the other patent has to do with energy management and our power shift capability. When you really think about it, it's a queuing system, not dissimilar from what you'd have in, if you think about going into a grocery store or when we used to go into a bank. And it's a queuing system where everybody's there and they're all physically plugged in, and then we're kind of taking turns. And part of the that queuing system is those preferences that people are specifying for how much they need and how urgent it is. But we also build a knowledge base. As Rachel mentioned, it's a closed system on a property. And if you think about it, it's like if the grocery store only had 20 customers and they had a long relationship with all 20 of them, and they knew exactly when the people came in and what they were shopping for and so on. So we learn the habits of the people who are plugging in. We know that, Jerry charged last night and he never charges on Saturday, right? And, we sort of build this kind of stuff and we use that, predictively. So when you plug in at 6 p.m., we can make a projection and say, oh, we're definitely going to have spare electricity for you at midnight and it's cheaper then. Or, maybe the projection says, by midnight, there's going to be tons of other people plugging in at the same time. So we have to start you off a little earlier. So, so anyway, that's all part of this patent on the energy management. And then, you know, tying it into the grid and the pricing and the demand events and the, you know, storage and availability of solar and kind of potential for arbitrage on that and sort of buy low, sell high kind of thing. So all that's part of another patent. Yeah, we're really excited about, you know, as Rachel noted, it's like 40% of people are in multifamily. There's a lot of, you know, affordable housing as well, where it's a shame that people, you know, as you guys are all aware, EVs are lower cost to maintain, they're lower cost to operate. And as of roughly now, they're the same or lower cost to purchase. I think it's important that everybody get access to that financial benefit. And then there's a personal health benefit, right? If you live in a place where it's more EVs than fossil based, there's lower, you know, there was a study done at USC over the last 18 months that showed reduced asthma and breathing issues for people. So it's a personal health thing, and then obviously an environmental health thing. So we really want to make sure that everybody can get those benefits. And so solving this problem we felt was really important. And you know, we also think, I think Rachel noted the inflexibility when you're at a supercharger. It's not as good for the grid. You know, supercharging has a very high demand spike. And if you can't shift that in time, you know, that's the most difficult situation for the grid. And we're, you know, flattening out that curve with a lower demand spike and able to shift the demand in time. It means that we can help, you know, manage the load on the grid. So we think what we're doing is beneficial to utilities and the grid. It helps with EV adoption, and it helps make the benefits of EVs, you know, broadly available to everybody, no matter where you live. Joe, yeah.
Thank you. Based on your experience with relating to power sharing, based on your experience where, let's say, an apartment unit, they have no past experience for usage, is there a rule of thumb that you've developed for, say, 20 stations? How much would a service panel need to provide for the 20 stations, recognizing they're all not going to be fired up at the same time? And with your power sharing, how much current should an owner allocate to say something like a 20 station setup?
Yeah, and it depends on whether it's 3-phase or split phase. But we actually almost always do a load study. As you know, the first thing we do when we approach a property owner is we explain to them roughly, you know, what the costs are and what the benefits are, and they then sign an engagement. We call it a site evaluation, and they pay us $1,000 for us to kind of get started. And one of the things they sign is they allow us to query the utility on what kind of service they have, but it also allows us to put a load study on. So we actually put equipment in that measures how much the building is currently drawing. And, you know, ideally we'll get, you know, for around 120 to 150 amps, you know, we can get, 20 spaces set up for in that vicinity. But we do that load study, And, buildings are all over the map, but multifamily, electricity is probably the worst situation in multifamily than single family or commercial. I've been in buildings with 10 units that has about the same service as my single family home. It's like 200 amps for a 10-unit building. So we kind of look at that, and generally buildings that were constructed from like 1975 on usually have a decent switchgear to go into, and we're able to do that load study and make a proposal. Other factors definitely come in with the utility. And I would say dealing with the utility is the hardest part of our business. So Silicon Valley Power is a lot easier than PG&E, by the way. Yeah, so things we need to know are like how overloaded the transformer is. And transformers, different brand of transformers have different surge characteristics, and the type of master breaker you have to put in depends on, it has to align with the transformer. So again, the first thing we do is kind of send a query to the utility and say, tell us, how thick the wires are going into this property, and what kind of transformer it is. And then we go from there. And we part of our turnkey is we actually take care of all this, right? So we coordinate the design, we coordinate with the utility, we coordinate with the city, and that's been part of what's impeded the deployment. Is the property owners just get overwhelmed by this, and they don't want to pay their property managers to deal with it, right? They're property managers, they want them to give tours and tell them, how nice the carpet is in the hallways and stuff. That's what they want their property managers to do. So.
Thank you.
All right, great. I have to drop myself, but I really appreciate your time. Yeah, anybody who does want to invest, contact me. We're really excited.
Anybody who has specific properties in mind that would be
that's even more important.
Yeah, that would be interested in this. I'm going to put my email in the chat, and would love to connect on that.
Yeah, and yeah, I think there's an event in the next, I think next weekend. There's another one of our community events coming up here. So I'm sure I'll see you guys around. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Boy, this is not letting me put my email in there. I don't know why. Yeah, okay, to everyone.
Well, in theory, I have your email, so I could put it in the chat.
Okay, Rachel.Korn@GoPowerEV. Here in 2 pieces.
Okay, we got
Korn
it.
with a C, right?
Korn with a C, yeah.
Yes, okay.
There we go.
Double check
Okay.
that for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Looks good.
Perfect. So again, the Santa Clara properties, Jerry, we can give it to them at a very good rate. Anything in San Mateo, Marin, someplace in the Easter Bay. Palo Alto is great. Palo Alto gives almost completely free up to $80,000 on installation.
Do you have any plans to expand into other cities? I know San Diego is kind of an EV hub.
Yeah.
And Sacramento.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're in Sacramento. SMUD also has very generous subsidies. We were just assuming the group here is primarily Bay Area, But
Yeah,
for sure-
but I think your video will make it countrywide eventually.
Oh yeah, okay. So Sacramento is very good for us. SMUD has very generous subsidies. We're in Southern California as well. The less generous subsidies there, but we for sure have a team there, and it tends to be there's pockets there with good subsidies. There are pockets there that are just market rate, but they have a lot of EVs. So with the fact that we're such low cost, the ROI ends up being, about 3 years on an installation in San Diego, LA, and those areas.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Joe.
Hey, I have a question for any of you here on the call. There were a couple of times when John was talking that I could not hear him. I'm wondering, is that on my end, or were you experiencing the same thing?
I think it might be on your end, although there was some kind of audio distortion that I heard from time to time, but it wasn't unintelligible. It was just kind of a little chirpy.
Okay.
I have a question for Rachel. Whoops.
Yes.
Rachel, I have a question for you. Is that all right?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. All right. So far, you've been talking about apartment units. The two cases that I have in particular are units that are combinations of
Yeah.
condominiums and townhouses. What has been your success rate so far in terms of penetrating that particular market?
Yeah, so probably about 20% of our customers are condos and HOAs. The setup in terms of the pricing is a little different there, but other than that, it's very good. It's also the metering situation is a little different there because it's on an individual unit. So we tend to just do this presentation for them for apartment buildings, but there's no reason why it doesn't work for HOAs.
Could you identify some of the differences you just said because of the metering? But your billing structure would sort of be the same, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so what we do in HOAs, because the one point of resistance with HOAs is that the board does not want to pay a lot in the fees. So in that case, we reduce that $200 to $300 number that I gave you. We reduce that a little bit, and we increase the per space fee to $20, and that gets billed directly to the owner as opposed to the condo association.
Okay, I understand. All right. Thank you for that.
But it's a really good solution for those. And again, it's from the prospect of future proofing and scalability, it's very easy for us to go and wire bases where there are no EVs at almost a minimal cost, and make it ready one time for people when they eventually buy EVs.
Okay, are there any final questions before we wrap it up?
All right, well, thank you, everybody. It's been a pleasure meeting all of you and talking to you, and hopefully we can connect in the future.
Yeah, and I say go EV.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. I think you have a great product.
Thank you.
Got a
Appreciate it.
great future, I think.
Appreciate it. Looking forward to hearing from you. Hopefully we can connect with some of your properties.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.